The primeval sea lagoons have left a landscape of unique beauty in the heart of the Alps. What used to be reefs are now cliffs. The living reefs were turned to stone hundreds of millions of years ago. Over the ages, layer has been piled upon layer, hiding the true treasure of the seas deep in the mountains. Salt, the source of all life. Water showed us the way forward and turned an inhospitable region into one of the oldest cultural landscapes of Europe, living between rock and lake. With every step, the people of Hallstatt tread on historic ground. The houses huddle together, perched on the mountainside. A whole cultural epoch bears the name of this mining settlement, the Hallstatt period. This little town is world famous. "3,500 years of salt mining have written its history, and its people are proud of their tradition. The age-old miner's greeting has echoed here for centuries, because the oldest salt mine in the world is still being worked. The town band, wearing traditional miner's costume, plays an essential part in daily life and festivals. Artists, poets and scientists have been fascinated by Hallstatt. But it was the townsfolk themselves, first and foremost, who recorded their history. One official made a careful record of events and studied old archives. The miners experienced history at first hand and noted down events as a matter of course. For centuries, educated officials kept an account of events, filed reports or sent them to the imperial court in Vienna. They became the chroniclers of Hallstatt.
It must have been a few centuries before the birth of our Lord that salt mining began. Rome had not yet been built when the first civilization of Central Europe flourished in a small alpine valley, the Hallstatt culture. This is where salt was first mined.
A highly developed technology had evolved in the 5th century BC. The underground workings were carefully organized. The salt industry flourished. Salt was much sought after in trade and linked the Hallstatt settlers to the whole world. The people built their houses directly above the salt mines, high above the lake. Life here went smoothly on its way. Until one fatal day in the 4th century BC. Underground, the storm and rain went unnoticed. The miners felt safe in their toil. No one was alarmed yet. A child was born, but would not live to the end of the day. In an instant, a devastating landslide wiped out all life and culture in the mountain valley. It was the end of the Hallstatt period. The settlement disappeared, but treasure hunters brought a renaissance. The mountains around Hallstatt are a record of the Earth's history in stone. The Dachstein mountain bears witness to the immense forces that shaped this landscape over millions of years. When the Ice Age glaciers began to melt, they carved huge caves out of the rock. The porous karst soil is like a sponge. Rain and melted snow and ice seep away. The water bursts out at the foot of the mountain. It loses none of its creative power and spreads out over the whole land, bringing life to every nook and cranny. Water has been tamed and has become an ally in modern salt mining. Since the Middle Ages, water has been leaching the salt out of the rock, under control and with the use of the latest technologies. Machines have penetrated deep into the mountainside in a search for salt deposits. The drills cut through the rock layer by layer. Salt is found again and again, at incredible depths, guaranteeing resources for coming generations. The drill cores show the miners where to find the salt. Everything is analyzed and recorded in detail, the position, the size and properties of the salt veins. Geological maps reveal the dark depths. With this knowledge, the entire mine workings are planned. New galleries are opened up. The miner knows the underground world as intimately as his own house. Nevertheless, breaking through a rock face into an existing gallery is a tense moment. Precise success is the reward for perfect work.
Hallo da oben! Ja, bravo! Bravo, gekauft! 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 Wunderbar! Wunderbar ist gegangen! Super! Frisch!
Little of the busy world below ground can be seen on the surface above. Every year, come rain, wind or snow, 1 million people from all over the world flock to Hallstatt. Traces of the past are everywhere. The little town lives on its history and the legacy of the salt. Hallstatt is proud to be a World Cultural and Natural Heritage Site. Here, everything is crowded together, artistic treasures and the houses of the living and the dead. The people of Hallstatt built their town on a small peninsula. Since time immemorial, the space between the cliff and the lake has been crowded. And so all houses here rise on the foundations of older buildings amid the relics of the past. Medieval vaults stand side by side with the remains of Roman walls. Several house owners find treasure in their own cellars. The famous Hallstatt necropolis is the pride of the archaeologists. All that we know about the people of the Hallstatt period can be read from these graves. Burial objects bear witness to prosperity, artistic skill, and far-reaching trade relations. The very bones tell of hard work in the mine. It was not an archaeologist, but a miner, Johann Georg Ramsauer, who discovered the burial ground by chance. He uncovered 980 graves and recorded his finds, grave by grave.
Dear friend, on opening a gravel pit in November 1846, I stumbled upon a previously unknown burial ground, which I then had carefully dug up. I was fortunate enough to find 7 skeletons with a number of ornaments. Signed, Johann Georg Ramsauer, Mine Manager, Hallstatt. I enclose the finest of the ornaments, together with 14 drawings.
Not all events have been so carefully recorded, and not all the stories have been written down. Much is still legendary. A nobleman and mine administrator, Christoph Eisel von Eiselsberg, left a strange provision in his will. His coffin was to be rowed across the lake to his castle every 50 years on the anniversary of his death. It is not known whether his wish was carried out. This much is certain. He purchased a place of eternal rest for himself in the chapel crypt. For all others, burial of the dead is only temporary. The cemetery is tiny, and graves are occupied for a fixed time. So the carnal house is the final resting place for everyone in Hallstatt. In olden times, the people of Hallstatt were not welcome in the forest. The timber belonged to the salt monopoly, and the game to the imperial house. The hunters have always guarded the game preserve and defended it against poachers. In the olden days, poachers shot the best stag and chamois to feed their hungry families and to annoy the authorities. They boldly took what the emperor refused them. He was more generous in other respects. An imperial decree that has been incorporated in present-day law provides the following. Every house owner in Hallstatt is entitled to wood from the federal forests. For 2,000 years, the people of Hallstatt have recognized the importance of the forest and the necessity of tending it. Foresters and gamekeepers of the Austrian Federal Forests Authority maintain this tradition. The forest around Hallstatt has long since become more than a source of timber. It is a recreational area for everyone. Nowadays, the main purpose of forestry is to protect nature. The people here are true master woodworkers. A woodworking institute was established here in 1873. For over 20 years, this institute has also taught violin making. The experienced, skilled violin maker knows that the wood must sing. There are special trees. Only the expert knows where to find them. Only a musician can already hear the music. The Hallstatt Woodworking Institute has an international reputation. Historical and modern instruments are made, and visitors come from all over the world to learn the craft. Restorers, craftsmen and musicians bring the music to life. Early in the year, the sun disappears behind the high crags and plunges the valley into mystic twilight. Cold comes with the mists before the winter breaks out with all its force. The snow spreads a mantle of stillness over man and nature. The miners continue to work deep underground just as before. Despite all the hardship, the townsfolk enjoy the strange beauty of winter. The town is silent. Hallstatt now belongs to its people. After heavy snowfall, the valley is completely cut off from the outside world for hours or days. But ice and snow do not disturb the daily routine. The stillness fosters a contemplative mood, and dark chapters of the chronicles are opened up. At one time, adherents of the Lutheran faith were outlawed. The new doctrine had fallen on fertile ground in many mining villages and in poorer districts. The Protestants held their meetings in darkness and silence to protect them from the spies of their harsh rulers.
What of the history of Protestantism in our region? It distresses me to write of the sad events of that time. In the 18th century, the Catholic ruling class was grimly determined to stamp out the secret Protestant movement in the area. But still, the people held their Bible readings in secret.
Vain attempts were made to ban the forbidden writings as brave women and men smuggled Bibles over the mountains from Germany. The faith flourished in secret.
In 1700, a decree was issued ordering Protestants to abjure their wrong faith. Those who refused were even put in irons. They were decent people and good craftsmen. Nevertheless, the chief administrator of the Salt Mining Board was forced to comply with the imperial decree and to deport the ringleaders and the most stubborn Protestants to Transylvania.
In the year 1734 alone, 43 Hallstatt families were banished from their homes.
A list of the deported persons. First family, Paul Labacher, Partikularknecht, with wife and 2 children. Second family, Stefan Huber, Holzknecht, with wife and 6 children. Third family, Tobias Lamber, Fuderfasser, with wife and 3 children. Fourth family, Paul Kaiser, 81 years, with wife and 3 children. Fifth family, Michael Neff, Tonlaufer, with wife and 4 children. Sixth family.
In that month, 243 men, women and children had to leave Hallstatt. Out of loyalty to their faith, they had to abandon their homes for an uncertain future in a distant land. The barges that they used to load with salt carried them down the river Traun, under the strict guard of the imperial soldiers. Their houses and possessions were sold, and the proceeds were sent to them after deducting various levies. The nobles looked on impassively, without pity. 50 years later, under the Emperor Joseph II, an edict of toleration reconciled Protestants and Catholics. Persecution came to an end. Even today, only very few people know the secret meeting places used by the Protestants. Where they held their services, their names have been carved for eternity into the rock. The sun is higher in the sky. Spring has come. Nature and culture both live in harmony here. It was difficult to gain a footing on poor soil and steep crags, but humans and nature have forged unusual relationships in the history of this landscape. This region has always been praised for its unique beauty. It has also attracted scientists. Ammonites are particularly numerous in the old limestone rocks of the Dachstein Massif. These fossilized denizens of the primeval seas were the starting point for the systematic study of our planet's history.
An untold variety of species of the fabled horns of Ammon, those strange cephalopods with their extraordinary shells, lived over 160 and more million years ago in a realm that is now beneath the sway of the proud, majestic Dachstein.
Those who live in this landscape are captivated by its beauty. This is a red-letter day for the town band. In the late spring, the people of Hallstatt prepare for a special event. Tradition is more alive in Hallstatt than elsewhere. This is an opportunity to revive the old customs and don traditional costume. The ferry that goes daily between the town and the railway station on the other side of the lake brings visitors from all over the world. The festival of Corpus Christi has been celebrated here with Baroque pageantry since the year 1628. The procession is a festive occasion for all the townsfolk. Everyone has his place. The musicians, the miners, and the visitors. The largest of the barges carries the altar. In olden days, it regularly ferried salt across the lake. Everyone who has a boat joins in. For more than 300 years, processions of barges have sailed to the point on the lake that gives a view of the Salzberg mountain. Here the procession stops to give thanks for the treasures of the earth and the salt of life. As recently as the beginning of the 20th century, the only access to Hallstatt was across the lake. Anyone who is anyone still has his flat-bottomed boat, or Fuhr as it's called, in his own boathouse. The design of the Fuhr has not changed over the years, and the old working drawings are still used. The secret lies in the quality of the timber. Only well-seasoned planks of larch wood can be used. This boat-building tradition is still alive in Hallstatt. So is the technique of elegantly maneuvering the boat with a single oar, standing up in the boat. And only those born in Hallstatt, the saying goes, can master this skill. The salt boating traffic of earlier years reached gigantic proportions. Exact figures are found in the old salt mine records.
240,000 Bohemian hundredweight barrels, 6,000 pounds in kegs, 12,000 tons of salt. A keg held 12 pounds of salt.
Barges carried the salt to distant lands. In Hallstatt, it was the administrative officials who benefited most from this trade, while the miners often went hungry. The profits bolstered the power of the Habsburgs. The bureaucracy of the Salt Mining Board was proverbial. Nothing was left to chance.
The crew are forbidden, on pain of severe punishment, from taking women on board. They would chatter with them and not heed the many dangers.
An army of officials had the salt monopoly firmly in their grip. Private individuals were entrusted only with the transport of salt. The barge crews and wagoners were in their pay. They were responsible for carrying the valuable cargo safely down the Traun and the Danube to the furthest corners of the monarchy. In the early days, the barges were broken up when they reached their destination. But the people of Hallstatt would no longer tolerate such waste and devised a way of bringing the barges back. Upstream. The upstream journey of the salt barges was a huge operation and dangerous work for man and beast. To begin with, farm labourers from the surrounding districts were hired, and later a separate proud profession was born: the Traun horsemen. They knew the quirks and dangers of the river and rode their powerful horses skillfully upstream. The barges brought essential food. Finally, the people of Hallstatt had guaranteed supplies and there was no more famine. The salt workers received part of their meagre wages in kind. The Salt Mining Board decided how much a family needed to live on for a week. The upstream traffic revived trade and brought prosperity along the banks of the river. Although the salt trade flourished, the imperial house in Vienna complained of lack of money, and salt from Hallstatt was needed to fill the gap. Production had to be increased, new galleries and leaching plants were planned. Deposits that had been worked in prehistoric times were gradually opened up. The working reports of the year 1734 record a strange find.
"3 weeks ago, a structure collapsed in the Emperor Joseph pit, so that the foreman inspected the site last week and this week."
The miners begin a routine inspection. But as soon as they reach the leaching plant, a strange smell greets them. With mixed feelings, they search for the cause. The first clues are confusing. scraps of fabric and strange tools, certainly very ancient. Their curiosity is aroused. They are miners' tools, that's quite certain, but the design and shape are unknown. For the rest of their lives, they will not forget what they now find embedded in the rock. Centuries later, it'll still be talked about. The man in the salt. The prehistoric miner preserved by the salt has lain here for thousands of years. The fatal landslide of those times buried him. The men who discovered him did not grasp the historic significance of their find. They hastily buried the mummified body and walled up the workings. Treasure has been dug up. Stories have been written. And yet, this land between rock and lake still has many secrets.
Thus, many stories that I tell you and have read have become history. I now lay down my pen, aware of the gaps in my knowledge. I have written this account for the use and pleasure of future generations.